It's the candidates, round 3, and the battle between the two top seeds, Ding Liren and Fabiano Caruana. Caruana started pretty well with 1.5 out of 2. Ding started with 2 losses, disastrous for him. Let's see what happened in the big clash. So Ding with the white pieces. It's a Slav. Now, Fabiano plays a whole range of systems, but we haven't seen the Slav too much from him. But he is very well prepared in the opening. As we were about to see, this game is an absolute treat, so stick around. So mainline Slav and knight e5. Main move here is knight d7. But e6 is also pretty well known. And here there's an absolutely crazy line that starts with e4 and then this piece sacrifice. But Ding didn't want to go in for that, but instead played knight takes c4, also reasonable, and he's played this before. And now he played king to f2, which looks a bit bizarre, but it's all about getting in e4 without allowing that sacrifice. And actually, if white gets in e4, pushes the bishop back, and plays, for example, bishop e3, then actually the king is fine. Ding actually had this. For example, bishop g6, Ding had this in 2012. And he actually, well, achieved a reasonable position with white. And here, well, this is an extraordinary moment in the game. Caruana played a completely new move, and it looks absolutely mad. I mean, if you were to predict a move here with black, what would you play? c5 is in fact the most common move, but it wasn't c5, and c5 looks very logical, but no, it wasn't c5. Maybe I'll just sit back and, have a little think here. Let's just take a little pause. I'll have a little slurp of tea. You have a little slurp of tea. And, what would you come up here with black? Well, Fabi played e5. Never been seen before. It looks completely crazy. Black is giving up a pawn. Absolutely mad. And here, well, Ding thought for 17 minutes. Well, you would, wouldn't you, if your opponent is springing a completely new idea on you, particularly in a position as sharp as this. If white wants to bail out, then it's possible to take on e5. And, well, black can either play the endgame or play here and try to get some compensation. Queen h4 check is threatened, and this is possible, but it's not risking too much with white. But of course the principal move is to take the pawn, and Ding, well, he's the kind of guy that doesn't like to compromise. He's a calculator. He's not afraid to put in the time and try and work out the solution. So after 17 minutes he took the pawn. Now, the follow-up for black, that this is pretty amazing. I mean, white still just wants to play e4, of course. Bishop c2, I mean, this is chess from another planet. It really is. If that bishop is taken, then black will take on d4 and take the knight. So material is even, but I mean, black has very easy development and is fine. But Ding wouldn't be going in for this if he took the bishop. So queen d2, so keeping control of the pawn. So already we've got a mad position on the board. It just looks like someone's come along and dropped the pieces on the board. What is that bishop doing on c2? So here we go, c5. So gotta try and keep the initiative. And if that pawn's taken, then queen e7 starts hitting things, and taking here might be dangerous for the king. So really, white needs to keep it closed. So d5. Now the bishop is threatened because the pawn has moved to d5. So bishop b3, threatening to take on d5, so obviously e4, the natural move. So white has this wonderful pawn chain. So how exactly is black going to stir up trouble here? Okay, we'll start with rook here. Now that could be that there might even be a possible sacrifice here, and knight takes, and watch out for the queen. So queen f4 protects the knight. It's already looking very strange. Now, these bishops aren't actually doing too much. So c4, it's mad stuff. So this opens up the diagonal. And Ding, well, he took that pawn. Yeah, you've got to watch out for moves like bishop d6, of course. So knight takes pawn. And knight d7. I should mention that Caruana was playing his moves instantly, and after just 15 moves, he was over an hour ahead on the clock. Ding had 37 minutes remaining against 1 hour 41 minutes for Caruana. In fact, he'd gained time because you get 30 seconds added to the clock each time you move. So bishop e3 from Ding looks sensible to cover the diagonal to the king. So white is 2 pawns up. Now can black stir up some trouble here while white's king is a little bit insecure and white's development is incomplete? The rooks are split. Well, black could take on c4 and play knight e5 and try to get some play like this. So black is pretty active. The queen is not wonderfully placed. White always has to watch out for sacrifices here. I mean, that's possible, but Fabi played knight f8 instead and hit the queen like this. Now, my computer says that queen c1 is the best move here. I can understand why Ding was reluctant to play this, because after this opens up this line, which could be interesting. If knight takes, then queen takes, and well, black is a piece down, but that's suddenly very messy. Watch out for the rook entering the game. So pawn takes, and now rook c8. That could be useful on the same line as the queen. Bishop takes. Ooh, lots of nasty pins here. The knight is pinned. If the pawn takes, then queen h4 check, followed by taking the bishop. I mean, white doesn't have to take that, but this is suddenly getting very messy. Is white going to survive this? Can white come out unscathed with his king shuffling around in the middle? I mean, objectively, black should be lost here with, white has an extra piece, but it's a really messy position. So I'm sure that Ding basically looked at this and just thought, I really don't want to retreat my queen. It's better to stay active. So he played queen f5. But that definitely gives Caruana a chance. Now this has helped white to develop, well, it's connected the rooks, but it's still a really messy position. And after these bishops are exchanged, then of course that leaves these diagonals a bit weaker, those dart squares. Black can use those for his pieces, so it's tricky stuff. Now, here's an interesting moment. Fabi thought for almost 15 minutes here and recaptured, made the obvious recapture. So why was he thinking for so long? Well, in fact, there's a very interesting move here, which might be better than the game continuation. He could play rook e5. And this pushes the queen to an awkward square. It's very, very complicated. Could end in a draw like this here. And, well, if queen g3 here, g5, this actually gives black a really strong initiative. The queen could be in trouble. Remember that black always has queen takes bishop check. But there's also queen h4. And now, yeah, this is the way it could end in a draw, actually. And queen here. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused myself. After knight g6 hitting the queen, queen h3, and like this could be a draw. That's plausible, repeating the position. But if white wants to play on, then it's possible to give the queen, but somehow I don't believe that black should be worse here. It's possible to, I know the centre pawns look impressive, but they can be broken up with f5. So rook e5 looks like a really interesting choice, actually. But Fabi played queen c5 check. And once again, rook e5 looks very interesting. But he played h6. He'd obviously thought this through when he was considering whether to play queen takes bishop check. He played h6 very quickly. But it seems a bit slow. Queen b6 attacks the pawn. And queen e3. Now, you have to think, what's black doing next? It's not clear that the queen can achieve much on its own. So Fabi went for a6 and b5 to try and stir things up. But this is a good maneuver. The queen comes back, ready to play queen f2 to expel black's queen. Remember, white is still 2 pawns up. And this pawn actually, well, it doesn't achieve too much. The knight comes back. You'll notice that these pieces are all protected. Well, not the rook, but well, after this, the rook is safe enough. And now Fabi is just kind of scrabbling around. He grabbed a pawn, but really the crucial thing here is that white is consolidating that center. You'll notice black hasn't been able to touch those. And after this, well, that prepares to give the king a square, but also starts the process of shutting out this knight. And the check, well, it doesn't achieve too much. So this is the next hope for black. Try and create a passed pawn, but queen d4 shuts down that possibility and vacates the f2 square for the knight. And that pushes the queen out. So white is getting pretty close to bringing the rook into the game. f4 is a bold move because it does allow black to sacrifice. So it opens up this diagonal. Now, if the knight goes back, then this is just horrendous. You can see white is just pushing black's pieces away. I mean, you can't contemplate a move like this. This is just permanently out of the game. And once white gets in king g2, rook across, it's a completely winning position. So here is where Fabi decided to sack a piece to try and keep the game a little bit complicated. I should say that, Ding had huge disadvantage on time. He'd used a lot of time, but actually we're at move 36 here, but he wasn't in horrendous time pressure. He had something like, well, from memory, I think it was around about 10 minutes remaining. Perhaps a little less, but 4 moves to make and 30 seconds each time you make a move added. In fact, he wasn't really in any kind of time pressure. He'd basically, by this stage, he'd got control, with that wonderfully centralized queen. Now, this is a nice move. So obviously, White's only problem here is the rook in the corner. And he just played king f1. Just preparing to bring the rook across and bring the rook into play. And suddenly, White could have the attack if Black isn't careful. I mean, if g6, then White is ready to play knight g4 and in, basically. So that's why f6 was played. And now Ding is just taking control. And that's a careful move, b3, ensuring that Black's majority on the queen side never gets going. So now it's just a case of being very careful, playing, as Spassky used to say, playing like an oil tanker, just making sure you sit there, keep control. More spinning with the knight. Of course, that can't be taken because of the pin, but queen e3, no problems, and h4, let's push it away. Yeah, the knight comes round here, but basically it doesn't matter. White is in complete control here. And queen c5 is a nice move, protecting the bishop, supporting the rook, attacking a rook, and also enabling White to take the pawn on f6. Usually at this point, people start screaming, "Why didn't Fabi resign? It's plus 32 for White." He didn't resign, but well, I simply don't have a problem with people not resigning. It's also still a slightly messy position. No matter what the digits say, White still has to win this. And Fabi, well, he put up as much resistance as possible, and that is fine. Just try to keep it complicated. So, he's got a passed pawn. This king still kind of wandering around a bit. Yes, White is winning if White plays accurately. Still got a few careful moves to make. And Ding mopped up really well, actually. So let's just go to the end. And here is nice. Check. I think, when you're having to win a game like this, it's important to keep playing really accurately. Don't play half moves. And Ding did just that. This is a good move. He wants to turn things around and get an attack on Black's king. That knight does a great job of protecting the king. And now the counter-attack comes. If g6 to close this diagonal, then, well, that's a simple move. Can chop more pieces off. No difficulties. Fabi went rook e7. e5 check. And knight f5. There are various ways to win, but queen e4 is absolutely certain. Remember, there's a pin here, so knight g3 check isn't possible. If the queens are exchanged, of course, it makes life much easier for White. So Fabi kept the queens on. Now, queen takes knight threatened, so g6. Now the pin is broken. Excellent move from Ding. Rook b3 controls these key squares, and at this moment Caruana decided enough was enough. It's very hard to generate new tricks in this position. So there we go. Having started with 0 out of 2, Ding fights back and wins against the tournament favourite. he said after the game, during the game, I was very worried about my position, but he played too slow. He played many pawn moves. And I think he's basically referring back. If we go back to this position, I think this was a key moment. Yes, rook e5 earlier was definitely possible, but even here, h6 does look really slow. Fabi had to play rook e5. Ding also said, Ding was asked, how did you try and recover after these 2 losses? And he said that his friends encouraged me to keep fighting, which is why he said he didn't kind of steer the game towards a draw after this incredible novelty e5. He said, first thought I wanted to make a draw, but he said, I wanted to fight. Good man, and what a game we had. Takes a really brave player to basically try and refute this move, and that's what Ding did. It's incredibly impressive. So that just, well, I mean, to say that the tournament is open after 3 rounds, that's a given, but it really does even things up. So now there are 3 players sharing the lead. All the other games were drawn, by the way. Very interesting games, I have to say. Nepo, MVL and Wang on 2 points. Grishuk and Caruana on 1.5. And then 3 players on 1 point. Yuri, Alexienko and Ding all on 1 point. So basically, we've bunched again after 3 rounds. There are going to be so many twists and turns in this candidates tournament, but so far it's looking like we have an absolutely fascinating tournament. Fingers crossed it goes ahead without any hitches. Thanks for watching.